All right, so I'm going to be, as Lynn mentioned, talking about immunization management, and I'm going to be talking about all the tools that you can utilize in PCC EHR to better your immunization management. And not just using these tools, but using them in conjunction with each other and utilizing the resources that PCC offers to better utilize these tools. Short introduction about myself. My name's Jeremy. I'm on the new client implementation team. Been with PCC for just a little bit over a year now. I started on the rapid response team answering phones, so it's possible you may have heard my voice before. This is my second UC. I was at the physical UC last year in Vermont, so I may have met people there as well. And I've also done a number of new client go lives where I may have met some of you if you're watching. And I was also at the PMI conference too. So I did a lot of traveling actually in my first tenure at PCC, which was really awesome to get to meet a lot of our clients, and hopefully we're able to do the same thing next year as well. But for the time being, we get this really great opportunity to do a virtual UC and get to present these courses to everybody and still talk with you and learn from you and hopefully teach you some things as well. So as Lynn mentioned, we have the chat, we have the live session chat that'll be going on, the UC chat in our Mattermost, and you can use that to either just discuss the session or put in some questions that I'll address at the end of the session here. So feel free to ask your questions throughout there as they pop into your mind, and then we can address them at the end of the session. All right, and our goals for this session are going to be to understand the tools that PCC provides for immunization management, understand the benefits of actually utilizing these tools together in conjunction with one another, and then to also just always encourage reaching out to PCC support resources and your client advocate and our documentation resources as well to help you better use these tools and make sure that you're doing things as efficiently as you really can be. So I'm going to start talking about the vaccine lot manager. What is the vaccine lot manager? Well, it's used to track your vaccine inventory. It can track manufacturer information, lot numbers, expirations, funding sources, status of it, and all the increases and decreases to the supply that you have for it as well. And we can use it in conjunction with a barcode scanner to improve accuracy. There's also a number of related reports that I'm going to go over that tie into the vaccine lot manager that can help you manage this inventory as well. And I'm going to talk about the barcode scanners and what those are a little later as well. So why actually use the vaccine lot manager? Well, it helps you to accurately ensure administration information. So you're ensuring that you are having all the correct administration information that has been loaded into your lot manager actually go along with those administrations. So for example, if you're submitting to an immunization registry through your state, which we're also going to talk about a little later as well, using PCC, you're making sure that all of the information necessary is going along with those submissions. It allows you to easily see your inventory needs and what your current inventory is, so you can forecast for seeing what your future inventory needs are going to be, what you're going to need to add to your inventory, what you're missing, what's coming up. And it allows you to track your inventory transactions in a much more automated way. So for example, decreases automatically every time you actually create those immunization orders and administer them in a visit. So reporting reconciliation is another important part of the vaccine lot manager and what we can do with it. You can use the transaction log, which is just, it exists in every specific lot that you can open up in the vaccine lot manager. You can see every adjustment, historical adjustment, what user made the adjustment, the timestamp on the adjustment, and what it was for. So you're seeing shipment increases, you're seeing the decreases from administrations, you're seeing the decreases maybe from error correction or waste. You can use the vaccine reconciliation worksheet in the report library as well to compare your lot manager inventory with your physical inventory. And this is something that's really important and something that we really encourage you to be reconciling your inventory frequently. And that's going to help you catch and resolve discrepancies faster. The more frequently and consistently you're doing that, the easier it's going to be to actually resolve these discrepancies For example, if the last time you actually reconciled your inventory was 2 months ago and you find that you're off a dose, it's going to be real hard to track down what happened in those last 2 months, every single visit, and talk to people and try to figure out what actually happened in the physical visit, because we can provide data for what happened in the charted visit. We can provide data on your inventory, but we can't quite know 100% of what actually happened in the room. So the closer you are to the time when things actually happened, when mistakes happen, the easier it's going to be to fix them. I recommend at least a week, reconciling your inventory every week. That way, if you look back on some sort of mistake, you're only having to look in the last 7 days. If you're having a lot of volume, you go through a lot of vaccines, maybe you want to consider doing it even more frequently than that, having somebody dedicated to that role. You can also use the Immunization Administration Details report, and that allows you to see some additional administration and patient details along with that. I found this one really useful for determining, for example, if a patient should have received a VFC lot based on their insurance. So you can see that additional patient information and their eligibility status. So you can determine, hey, they received a private lot, but they were VFC eligible. So maybe you can find mistakes using that as well. I have just listed here some common causes of discrepancies that I've seen throughout my time at PCC and ways to quickly resolve them. There's a lot here. This is mostly as a reference down the road, but I'll go over just a couple of them as examples. So, for example, shipment increases. You may have added too few doses. A lot of time typos just coming in when you're having shipments. You always want some sort of second factor to reconcile your inventory against. So you want to have some, like an invoice and an order history for what actually came in when you added that shipment. So you're making sure that what you've put into the lot manager matches that. Another example, vaccines that were administered but not actually ordered in the visit. So it's administered physically, but it wasn't actually ordered, charted in the visit. And what that's going to do is that's going to create an extra entry in the lot manager because it hasn't had that decrease from administering it. So you're going to want to review recent visits. One thing that I found is really useful is actually the overdue immunizations report. You can, if you're reconciling your inventory weekly, you can look back on the last week's appointments who came in the last week. Are they overdue for immunizations? They were just in the last week. Why are they overdue for immunizations? That's going to help you to break down who you may have missed actually ordering the immunization in the visit. And kind of the opposite of that, charted immunization order that wasn't actually given physically. So that is going to cause the exact opposite, where you have an extra physical dose, but the lot manager is saying that you have less than what you actually do. So that's where you're going to want to check the transaction log to see all the transactions that happened. You can check the administration details report. You want to find that the erroneous error, you want to edit, cancel, and save that and get rid of it from the visit. And again, just constantly stressing, the more frequently you do this, the easier it is going to pin down to find where the error was. And then the incorrect lot used for administration, like I mentioned before, as an example, private versus VFC funding source, you can use the transaction log or administration details report, again, to find the incorrect order and edit select the correct lot and then save it. And for the future, you'll want to look toward using a barcode scanner, as I mentioned before, during administration to ensure that the correct lot is actually being selected. Because if you're scanning the vial that you're administering, then it's going to select the correct lot for you. You're not basing it on just selecting the correct one in the drop down. All right, and go ahead and let's get started with the lot manager. If you're not already using it, then you can get started using it. If you're already using it, but you've heard some things here that are interesting, or you're interested in some of these reports and how to use them better, a lot of them can be a little daunting a lot of times getting started with doing this reporting. But always remember that PCC support is available. Your client advocate is available for assistance running any of these reports, using the vaccine lot manager, advice on fixing discrepancies. We won't be able to often give you a hard answer on what happened, but we can help you trace what happened using the data. ultimately you're going to have to find out in the office what happened, in the actual room, what happened in the room. And then reviewing learned documentation on the lot manager and immunization reporting. I have a link here to the Learn article on the vaccine lot manager inventory management. It's really a fantastic article, has a lot of really good information in there, screenshots. It's going to help you a lot if you're just getting started. I'll also have that later in all the references as well at the end. All right, so scanning. I mentioned scanning a whole bunch, but what is scanning? How do we use scanning? So when we talk about scanning in this context, when we're talking about immunizations, we're not talking about the same scanners you might be using to scan in your insurance ID cards or forms or screenings. We're talking about barcode scanners. So vaccine vials have small little 2D barcodes that can be read with a barcode scanner. The lot manager can detect these scans, and it can auto-populate lot information when you're adding new lots. So it can fill a lot of that information you may be putting in manually now for you. It can also be used during administration to make sure you're actually selecting the correct lot. So it'll select the lot for you when you scan the vial in the order. This is just a little picture of what that actually looks like. We talk about the 2D barcode a lot. Doesn't necessarily mean a lot to some people and can be a little confusing because it's a piece of paper, everything's 2D on it. So we have a 2D barcode, that's that one right there in red. You don't want to be using the one just over to the left. A lot of times what can happen is they're so close together, sometimes the barcode scanner might pick up the one on the left and it's not going to really know what it's looking at. So you want to make sure you're scanning that square 2D barcode over there. And it's going to look, it may be in a different place depending on the vial as well, but that's basically what you want to be looking for. So why scan? It's going to help you improve patient safety. So it's going to help you make sure that the vial, the physical dose that you're giving is matching what's in the actual order, the administered order. It's going to help you reduce inventory administration errors. It's going to help have more complete data transmitted to the Immunization Registry. And we're going to talk about the registry a little later, but it's going to really help you with that as well. And it's going to save you time from manual entry. That's a big one too. If you have a lot of lots to add to your immunization lot manager and you're clicking add and then typing in all the information, the funding source, the manufacturer, you're putting on all that information for every single one, it's going to take a long time. You have the barcode scanner, you just scan it and it's there. All right, so what's a scanner? What do these things actually look like? How do they work? Effectively, I like to describe them. They basically are like a keyboard. They work in a very similar way. They read the output of what you scan, the barcode you're scanning, and they output the content upon detection. You can actually take these things, you can open up Notepad or a Word document or something, you can scan the barcode and you'll see a bunch of text just type into the screen. That's effectively what it's doing in the system as well. It's just copying that information over. And they're just little small handheld devices, and we have a couple options of how they can actually be used. So we have USB barcode scanners and Bluetooth barcode scanners are what we commonly recommend. We have a brand that we usually recommend to people when they're asking about barcode scanners. And this is what they look like. These are the Zebra brand scanners. This is a USB barcode scanner. The benefits of the USB ones are they're plug and play. When I say plug and play, what do I mean? I mean that similar to a keyboard, you can take the USB cable, plug it into your computer, you can get scanning right away. You can unplug it, plug it into another computer, start scanning with that one as well. So it doesn't require any additional setup other than just plugging in the USB cable to your workstation. So in that way, they're shareable. You can you can move them from workstation to workstation if you need to, and they're less expensive as well than the Bluetooth ones. They have a little less hardware. The downside of them is they're tethered. They have a cable, obviously. They're a little bigger and they're a little less portable. So generally, the way I've seen these used is keeping them more to one place. For example, if you have a central lab in your office and you have the vaccine fridge there as MAs or whoever is preparing the actual vaccines, you could have a station where they're scanning in all those vials before they go into the room. This is an example of how these ones might be used, but you could also carry them around, just keeping in mind that you're gonna have a little cable that's gonna be attached to it as well, along with the workstation if you're going into the room with them. The other kind is these Bluetooth barcode scanners. So these are a little smaller, they're more compact, they're more mobile, and they could fit in your pocket really easily. They don't have any wires attached to them. The downside of them is they require setup. You have to pair them. Anything with Bluetooth, if you've used it before, you have to pair it to a workstation. So in that way, they're a little more individual workstation based. But for some people, this can be a benefit. This is what they're looking for. They may want to have each individual have their own scanner so that they can go room to room with their workstation and easily scan. And they also require charging. So since they don't have a cable to get power from, they need to be recharged. So get started scanning. Again, reach out to PCC or your client advocate for additional guidance on if you're looking to buy some barcode scanners, if you're looking to sort of work out your workflow of what that's going to be with your barcode scanners and your employees, how you're actually going to do that, because sometimes it can be a big question mark of, well, we have these things, but how are we going to actually utilize them? So reach out to PCC, check out the Learn documentation as a primer and how you can utilize scanning with the vaccine lot manager together. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is immunization registries. So immunization registries, very complicated, as I'm sure many of you may know. We have interfaces with the majority of state immunization registries in the United States. We submit administration data automatically to those connected registries using a standard format called HL7. We do not receive data from connected registries at this time. And we also have an ability for registry responses to actually be reviewed in PCC EHR to see rejections, errors, warnings from the registries. It's keeping in mind that if that registry actually sends that information, some may not actually send that information back to us. So it's very state by state. So how do you ensure accurate data gets sent to your registry? Well, make sure first you're using a real provider, an MPI assigned to the visit when you're going through and actually having those orders in your visit. You want to review and update all the patient demographics, so race, ethnicity, personal contact, and the immunization communication preference is one that's going to come along with the registry for actual consent for that. You want to always be completing the VFC eligibility status field for every visit. So not just if they are eligible, but you also need to be marking it if they're not eligible. And then you want to fill in all the fields in the immunization administration. If you're using a barcode scanner, as I mentioned before, this is going to make sure that you're selecting the correct lot, which is going to make sure that the correct additional information that goes along with that lot, such as the manufacturer, is also getting sent, and the CVX is also getting sent as well. So you're having that accurate information along with the administration information that you're putting in yourself. So getting started with making a connection. The best way to do that, first, make sure you're registered with your state immunization registries. In some cases, there's city immunization registries. For example, New York City requires a city immunization registry. And reach out to PCC support, your client advocate, who's going to help you to determine if and when a connection can be established. As I mentioned before, it's very state by state. Every state are fairly different. They're getting a little more standardized, but it's going to really depend on your specific practice and your specific setup and your specific state of how we're going to be setting those up. And we'll work with you to determine the best way we can do that. So last thing I'm going to talk about is the Immunization Forecaster. So this is our tool that lives in the immunization history and the immunization component while you're charting. It's going to display a list of upcoming missing immunizations for the patient. It can also display warning messages that provide information about administered vaccines that may not have met guidelines. These guidelines, I want to stress, are meant to assist but not replace medical decision making. So this is here as a tool to help you, but ultimately the decision is up to the provider. And just a little picture of what that forecaster actually looks like if you're not already familiar with it. We have a recommended date, minimum date, past due date, maximum date, and we have the actual vaccine family they belong to and which dose that they're on. So how does forecasting actually work? So there's a kind of a bunch of technical information here, but it's a big question for a lot of people. Where's this information coming from? Who says what goes here? And that's a great question. So this is coming from a product called Immucast that is developed by STC. They use a rule set that's built on the ACIP immunization schedule from the CDC. So that's what these are actually based on. The forecasting results and warnings, they don't represent medical authority in deciding what immunizations the patient should actually receive. That's up to you. You may adhere to a different immunization schedule. You may make different decisions based on the patient. You may completely decide to go against it. That's up to you. It's just going to display the information that is recommended. And these can also change over time. They do change over time frequently. We have a team that reviews and considers every update that we get from STC, and we approve those before we actually push that out to you. So even after they have approved and pushed out their updates, we additionally review those and push out updates only once we've actually reviewed the new forecasting rules. So why forecast? Why use this tool? Well, it gives you those recommendations right at your fingertips. It's right there. It's good reminders. It's something that can be easily referenced right in the EHR when you're reviewing a patient's chart, when you're reviewing their immunization history, when you're charting a visit. This allows you to review the forecast before visits to easily determine what you're going to need for that visit. So you could use it to, in conjunction with this overdue vaccine recall report, it's actually based on the forecaster results to see who's going to be due or overdue for specific vaccine families. And that's going to also allow you to run this ahead of time, see what your inventories or needs are going to be. You have this list of patients who are going to be needing a specific vaccination in this immunization, this vaccine family. It's going to give you an idea of what you're actually going to need for your inventory as well. This is also an optional feature. You can contact PCC to support to turn it on or off. By default, it's on, but if you really do not like it, we certainly can turn it off. So overall session takeaways, what I want you to really take away from everything I just talked about here, or if you're going back and reviewing the materials, reviewing the documentation, that learned documentation, and thinking about talking to PCC support or your client advocate is just understanding how these tools can work together in conjunction to ensure accurate information is being charted and sent to your immunization registry. Keep track of your vaccine inventory electronically so that you can better ensure accuracy, make sure you're not missing any vaccines, and use reports to go back and audit those. And also just generally ensuring your patient population is always up to date. These are going to help you to do that. And we want you to be encouraged to always reach out to PCC support for any assistance with these tools. So then there's my list of references there. You can find it in the handout as well, in the PDF version that Jan or Lynn will make available in the chat and will be alongside the materials. These have links to all the Learn articles that I've referenced here. Again, they're really fantastic. I can't stress how great Learn is. When I was on the rapid response team, I used learn.pcc.com every single day to answer questions for clients. So I still use it every single day on the new client team. So definitely big shout out to the education team on that one. And I also have a quick link to the CDC site that actually has those recommendations that STC uses in our forecaster. Okay, so I will open it up for questions. Lynn.
All right, first off, I want to reiterate something Dr. Warner is saying in chat for those of you that are not in the chat while we're watching this live. If the 2D code is too close to that old barcode, you may need to put your finger over the linear barcode so it scans properly, because sometimes, like Jeremy said, it will pick up the wrong code. So make sure you cover the old style one so you get that 2D code.
Great point.
The other thing, I have a question. Two questions actually.
Okay.
Some vaccine lot numbers differ from on the box and actually on the actual syringe or vial. Yep. Do they have to take out the vial or syringe to scan them when adding the inventory, or can they use the box?
We would recommend using the vial because you want the vial to match the lot that's in the inventory so that when you're scanning it in for administration, it can find that lot. So if you have the box one scanned in when you actually added it to the lot manager, and then you go to scan the vial for administration, it's not going to find it. So if that does differ, you want to be, yes, scanning the vial to add the inventory.
Good news, Jeremy. Your answer corresponded with Dr. Warner's answer, so
Good.
thumbs up there. Another question, is there a way when scanning in the barcode to get a warning if the VFC private status of the patient does not match the VFC private status of the lot?
I believe that's the way it works, but I always forget this one.
It does.
Yeah, thanks.
It does. It automatically, yeah, I know this one because I was part of the design team. If you pick the VFC status and then you scan in a private, it's going to pop up an error message saying, hey, these don't match. Are you sure you needed to do this? And actually, I don't think it allows you to scan in the non-VFC if you've said it's VFC. So that's one of the best reasons to, if you're doing VFC shots, to use the scanner. I mean, other than accuracy, I'm not going to ever say the scanner's faster when you're administering, but accuracy, it's number one.
Absolutely. Yep.
You are welcome, Dr. Matthews. Here's a question.
Okay, great.
In the vaccine lot manager, it decreases the amount. Why does it give you a negative number instead of just 0? It continues to count into the negative versus using the next available lot number.
Yeah, so it will continue to do that because it wants you to make sure that you've depleted that lot and then go on to the new one. There may be different information on that new lot. There may be a different lot to actually use. So the reason it goes in the negatives is so that when you review it later, you know that too many lots have been taken from that one specifically. There may be a way that we could look at some functionality with connecting lots together. That might be an enhancement. I would have to take a look at what the more specifics of that situation are. But generally it goes into the negatives so that you can then review it to see, oh, too many were taken from this one. So then you need to go and actually attribute them to the correct next lot and deplete that one.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that only happens if you're doing it manually and you haven't changed your lot number. If you were using the scanner would scan in the correct lot number.
Yep.
Right. Again, I have people typing, but I don't have questions yet, so hold on a second. I'm trying to think. Oh, by the way, the Bluetooth scanner. I want a quick comment on the Bluetooth scanner. I did have an office who purchased the Bluetooth scanner, and you have to be careful because they bought a Mac only version of the Bluetooth scanner in an office that only uses Windows machines. Luckily, I was there for their go lives and I have a Mac, so we set it up on my Mac for them to scan in all their inventory. So be aware those Bluetooth scanners sometimes come in a machine specific format. It just would not work on the Windows machine. So it's just something to be aware of when you're buying it.
Yeah, sometimes pairing can be a little complicated and weird too, depending on the workstation or depending on the version of Windows or Mac OS that you might have as well. So definitely the USB ones, as I said, they're really plug and play. They're really straightforward. They're basically just keyboards. They're very simple, but there certainly are a lot of nice benefits too to the Bluetooth ones once you do get them set up.
Okay, so they are using the scanner and it's not stopping the negatives from occurring in the vaccine lot manager. That makes me think your numbers are off somehow. I would reach out to your NCI tech because you haven't graduated yet, and talk to her about that. And it's not you, Jeremy. You're in the clear. And we can look at that and figure out why your numbers are negative. My guess is you either started with a number that's too low when you scanned it in and did the inventory, but we'll need to look at the reports and figure out what happened with that.
Yep.
If this is the office, I think it is, and I'm pretty sure it is. All right. Do we have any other questions for Jeremy? He's here for another 30 minutes if you guys need to talk to him.
Is it? I didn't even look at the time yet, actually. I was just wondering. I was like, how quick did I go through?
I was going to tell him at one point, slow down. Okay. Ooh, here comes one from Dr. Sachs, and it's really long, so here we go. Okay. Has there ever been talk of a method of hiding warnings about doses that are technically invalid but clinically not significant. This is the forecasting. Thinking of patients that receive doses a few days before due, so within the permitted grace period. Infants who came in for their 6-month birthday a little early and received the flu. MMRV given a little less than 1 month after a flu mist and will forever show us needing an additional dose of MMR and Verivax.
So saying that having some sort of functionality or ability to mark a warning as insignificant or ignore a warning and put in almost similar to how ERX will give you warnings and you can give them a disagree or clinically insignificant on that as well. Yeah, that's not currently a feature. I feel like I've seen an enhancement request for that before. I'm pretty sure that exists, and we can certainly add you to that, to the wishing well. It's interesting how we'll be doing sort of the typical wishing well situation at the UC here. I think the Mattermost is actually kind of useful for that. It's like always something we can quickly reference and go back to look at. But yeah, no, that's a great idea.
Yeah, there's also all the MMR shots being given early for people that are having outbreaks in their area. Same thing. It's always going to say that they got it too early.
Right.
Here's a question. All right. We have a kid that has varicella disease. Can we make it not call for the varicella vaccine? How do you do that, Jeremy?
Yeah, so the way that works is similar with the immunization history. You can have that disease entry by having that as a historical diagnosis or on the problem list. So you'll want to make sure that's added to the problem list, and that'll go ahead and add it as a disease entry on the immunization history, and then it will also update for the forecaster.
Yeah, if you go into the immunization configuration, there's a tab that people rarely look at that specifically lists all the diseases that would negate the need for a vaccine. It's, I believe, the third tab in the immunization configuration. We don't recommend you go in there and play, but you can easily see what things are in there that will trigger, what diseases that they've had that will trigger that.
Yeah, so that's looking for the SNOMED diagnosis somewhere on their history.
All right. In immunization forecasting, if there is a historical entry, forecasting will alert stating the patient is due for immunization when they really are not. Is there a way to correct that without editing, deleting, and re-entering?
It should be detecting historical entries too. I would say that if it's not, it may have the incorrect CVX code in the configuration for the immunization. That's one where if you see that, I would definitely recommend reaching out to support because we can take a look at the actual background configuration for that immunization and see why it's not matching. If that's happening, then the historical entry isn't matching to what the forecaster thinks the immunization is, right? So we can certainly make sure that that does match. So I would, for that specific case, reach out to support so they can take a look at the specific immunization on your system to see how it's configured.
Correct. If you're using one of the unspecified immunizations in that historical entry, the unspecified, if there's multiple CVX codes, it could be maybe it's not using the correct one, or maybe it doesn't have one at all, and we need to add a CVX code to that.
Yep.
So thank you, Jeremy, for the presentation. Thanks everyone for attending. We are going to stop this since there are no other questions. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, everybody.